I am moving.
All right, here we are. We're all back. Remember our requests at the beginning of the class?
Okay, unless you want the wrath of Stephen.
We're going to wrap up our conversations, please.
Okay, so some of you may have noticed, some of you may not have noticed. I played a little song during the break. The song, I always like to share this when I can in presentations now because it's a really neat thing you can add into your classroom repertoire. And it is the song is called Vigala. Is anyone familiar with it by chance? Okay, I didn't think so. I'll play it during lunch and I'll play it again tomorrow. Vigala, and now that you're going to know the story, now you're really going to listen. Vigala was the subject of an NPR story last year, and I immediately fell in love with it because the violinist is called her name is Esther Abrami, and Esther Abrami took this song Vigala. Vigala was a lullaby written by Ilse Weber, who was a nurse in Theresienstadt. And she wrote the lullaby for the children of Theresienstadt. And then as they were being deported to Auschwitz, she voluntarily went with them so they would not be alone. Esther Abrami discovered it and then put it to violin. It is just a hauntingly beautiful song that is even more hauntingly beautiful when you know the story. And I tie it in with my whole thing about the Holocaust being about individual choices and what an incredible, heroic individual choice that Ilse Weber made. So, as I said, this is one of my favorite topics to talk about when I give talks to teachers, and that is Jewish life before the Holocaust. And we're going to start with a thought question. And this is a tricky one, so be brave. What words come to mind when students think about the Jewish people of Europe when they are studying the Holocaust? What words come to mind for students?
Victims.
Victims. What else? I mean, that's absolutely the number one word. Typically,
Jewish people are.
many of them don't even know who Jewish people are. My
Internment,
school, I'm sorry,
internment camps.
internment camps. Okay. Yes, ma'am.
My kids, and they say, because so much has been visual, they say poor.
Okay, because of the visual side of it. All right. Yes,
A little bit.
exactly. So I always say to my boss, this is the only video that is non-negotiable. If I'm not allowed to show this part in my presentation, I won't do it because it's so important to me for this reason. We brought up a word, dehumanization, earlier. In your classrooms, please, before you dehumanize, humanize. And I know it's tough when you have a short amount of time, but please, I'm begging you, take a moment and humanize before you dehumanize. Before you show one piece of propaganda, before you show one anti-Semitic trope, before you show anything, humanize first. And Yad Vashem has tried to help out with this phenomenal little video that is 5 minutes long. You can show this and you're immediately humanizing your student. You're immediately humanizing the Jewish people for your students. And it also helps break a lot of those misconceptions. And I love this video. As you listen, as you watch this video, listen and think, is there a part that you can connect with? And is there a part your students can connect with? So here we go.
The Jewish world before the war was diverse, not homogeneous. There was no one way to be a Jew. They were traditional and modern and orthodox and progressive and every shade in between. They were Nobel Prize winners and they were tailors and tradesmen. They were wealthy and they were so poor they couldn't afford shoes for their children in the winter. They went to religious schools, they prayed, and they respected the 2,000-year-old Jewish tradition. But they also went to the movies, played sports, and danced the tango. They fell in love. They had fun. They were busy with life, looking toward the future. They did not live their lives in the shadow of the catastrophe looming on the horizon. We often say that it's impossible to understand the scope of the tragedy that was the Holocaust without understanding what we lost. Before World War II, close to 10 million Jews lived, worked, and grew up in Europe. In some places, like Greece and Italy, they had created communities that existed for over 2,000 years. In 4 short years, those communities were obliterated. On the eve of World War II, the interwar Jewish world was creative and complex, a rich mosaic full of change and hope for the future. Within a decade, most of Europe would be conquered by Nazi Germany. By 1945, 2 out of every 3 of these Jews were silenced forever. In the end, it didn't matter who or what they were. To the Nazis, they were all Jews, and that was reason enough to kill them. The Holocaust was the murder of 6 million Jews, each a human being, each a universe unto himself. But in addition, it was the decimation of the magnificent, vibrant culture these people had created all throughout Europe. It is necessary to understand not just how they died, but how they lived. By taking this glimpse into their life, culture, and the spirit of the world they lived in, we can give them back their names and their faces. This will help in understanding the magnitude of the tragedy and will ensure that the victims are not forgotten.
The work at school is finished. The days are sunny and warm. Our schoolmates dream about green fields, about the cheerful camp life. Never did life possess such joy and freedom from care.
You will get his entire diary in Salvage Pages at the end of the week.
It seems one does everything but pray. The girls talk and look down at the boys, and the boys talk and look up at the girls. This is what the entire thing consists of. I hated porridge. No matter how much butter and sugar was added, I couldn't stand the look of the gluey mass.
We had a Hanukkah play. I was one of the candles, supposedly of a menorah, and we all had a verse that we had to recite in Hebrew, and it was a very exciting thing to me.
My mother was meticulous about keeping kosher and prayed 3 times a day, even though she was a modern woman who read literature and spoke several languages.
I frequently imagined myself as a great ice skating dancer performing for large audiences.
When I went to shul, I made sure not to miss even one single word. This is how precious the Hebrew words were to me.
Spring, warm and gentle, brings a beautiful holiday of freedom, Passover. I have the job of cleaning our windows for the holiday.
In my dreams, I am a great poet, beautiful, talented, and very famous. My poems open the secret heart of the world, and its embrace carries me far away. With eyes closed, I lie for hours and daydream. Life is a mystery to me, a beautiful, secret mystery.
That last one at 12 years old to write that. It makes me just embarrassed. But I love that video. Before I ask y'all, I'll tell you my first connection because people always love to hear it. My first connection is not one you would think. My connection to this video is the little girl doing ballet on the beach because in a different life, I grew up doing ballet for most of my life. So I always connect with that video, that part of the video. Would anyone like to share? Was there a part of the video that stood out to you? Is there a part that really kind of spoke to you as a teacher, as a parent, as anyone?
Food texture is a problem for me. So I get I heard that loud and clear. Just like a same thing that I would have been worried about at an age like that. Please don't make me eat that slop. I would rather choke.
Absolutely. It gives that empathy right off the bat, right? We've all been forced to eat things we don't want to eat. Okay. What do you have since Stephen walked away from?
Oh, a Jewish joy. So I had a son 3 years ago. God help me, he's a lot. And it's not lost on me that this training is taking place next door to a place for primarily Jewish children who are probably frolicking and balleting and disliking porridge next door. And so my husband and I were really worried with some of the current events and terrorist attacks. Should we raise our son Jewish or not? We really had a lot of conversations about it because I just want him to be safe. And ultimately, we decided to teach him about his Jewish heritage because of Jewish joy. It's something that will never be defeated. And I love seeing it in this video because it's just as important and beautiful then as it still is now.
Thank you. Love that.
Logan, this is a little girl. This is my daughter.
Aww.
The same girl on the beach.
Yeah.
It is almost identical. So that's it. All of the same things. Every time I see that scene, all I see is my daughter dancing on the beach. The same way.
So
She's 27 now in Bangkok. When she loved me.
and anyone on the Zoom, please feel free to write in the chat and Kayla will tell us. But how could you use this in your classroom? How could this connect with your students?
Well, I connected with the dancer too, but I was a professional dancer for a while. But I think they see themselves in them. Like they're like, oh, I dance. I danced on the beach before. I did this. The thing about food texture, it just shows them that they're real people dealt with this. It's not just some people you don't know. This could have been you, like kind of situation.
Absolutely. Mine always connect with the church one where it talks about how the boys look at the girls and the girls look at the boys. My students are always like, yeah, that was Wednesday night. All right. Yes.
I'm gonna connect on Stevens. My grandchildren live in New York City, and they both in fifth grade had to do an assignment where they studied the Holocaust and went to the Holocaust Museum in New York, and they had to pick up pictures of the children and then pictures of them doing the same thing. So here you go, Stephen. Here's my granddaughter playing with her carriage and the little girl, and here they are in their winter clothes.
So adorable.
And then my grandson was playing hockey in his uniform with the little Holocaust time, the little boy in his hockey. So I connected to what Stephen did.
Kayla, did anyone share anything in the chat that was really powerful?
We have Colby says that this video could be used as an icebreaker.
Absolutely.
Jenna Price says that she has been attending many bar and bat mitzvahs with her children recently, and they've been doing the horror a lot. It's just so hard to watch them doing the dance before the war and to think about just a few short years later that they were gone. Cindy L says in 7th grade, I'm so sorry. It is age appropriate to judge what they cannot relate to. This helps them to see themselves in Jewish culture. And then Colby says again that this would be a great intro to the Holocaust.
Yes, and I love the fact that it's so diverse. So I'll tell you, when I use this video in my classroom, and then I get my kids back engaged after they make fun of me for dancing ballet, which they should not do. I was on the road to being professional and so destroyed my leg, by the way. So some heartbreaking memories there. But I connect it then with this map. Okay. How many of you have seen this map before? Ooh, okay, so this is going to be a good one. All right. Everyone on Zoom, you're going to do this too. So I want everyone to take 2 minutes and look at this map. Now, I'll explain the map real fast. The bar graph is the population of that country pre-war, Jewish. How many Jewish people lived in that country pre-war? The pie chart is what percentage of the population were they? So I want you to take 2 minutes, and people in the Zoom, feel free to throw it in the chat. People here, discuss at your tables. What are you noticing? 2 minutes, go for it.
Yeah.
About 1 minute, everyone. About 1 minute. Five, four, three, two, one. Oh, that was so cool. All right. Only my students. All right, so I'll go ahead and tell you, you could do a whole class on this map if you wanted to. You really could. So I'm going to ask real fast people in the room, and then we'll get some people from Zoom as well. What stood out to you about the map? And if you noticed, no contextualization with this one. We're just jumping in with this one and letting the map do the talking. All right. So what did the map say to you seeing it? And what do you think your students would see seeing this map? All right. Oh, all right. Hold on.
That the Jews were all over Europe.
Yeah, there's not a country on there without a Jewish population. Now, Albania is not exactly hitting it out of the park with 200, but there are people there, and that's important. All right, what else? What else do we notice? All right, here we go.
The largest concentration is in Eastern Europe.
Absolutely, and we need to remember that for our contextualization later on. The largest population is in Eastern Europe, absolutely. Poland and the Soviet Union and Romania especially, we see large bar graphs. All right, what else?
So while there is a larger concentration of them in Eastern Europe, you're still looking at the percents. I mean, the grand scheme of each of these countries, they're not making up the majority. Not even close. So it's like this group with the contextualization behind it, this group who has been persecuted or targeted, they are really a like small group when you look at it. And yet they're the scapegoats for this huge issue that's occurring in Germany.
Absolutely. So even with our massive bar graphs in both the Soviet Union and Poland, we're still talking about tiny percentages of people, which is going to enable that scapegoating to occur. Absolutely right. Okay. Kayla, did we have someone online with?
We have Elizabeth S. says Europe and North Africa are home to more Jewish groups. Lee Holder says also a great way to introduce the Holocaust and early world history, expulsion of Jews in Western Europe, help lead to larger numbers on the East. Also, Poland and others welcomed them during the Middle Ages.
Great. So I want you to keep this map in mind. I told you to keep the pedagogical principles in mind. I want you to keep this map in mind because the information on this map is going to be very important. And you hit on the main things. The percentages are small, and our big population centers are going to be in Eastern Europe. So with this inquiry, how can this map, though, also help students understand the gravity of the Holocaust? So if we go back to our pedagogical principles here, How could this map help them understand the gravity of what happened? Anyone? Okay, it affects more than one country. We're going to be talking about numerous countries, numerous geographical area. All right, what else?
It builds empathy in seeing that it's all of Europe into Asia, into Africa, and understanding the biggest part of that. They're all there, they're everywhere.
Yes, and the other thing I'll say though, be careful. You want to remind them, these are not just numbers, these were people. And that's important to keep in mind with them. All right, these are not just numbers, these are people. So keep that in mind as you work through. So we said, what? I'm sorry? Yes, and this is in Unit 2. So everything I show you is on our website. Everything, except for one thing, and I'll tell you where to find it. All right, so where did most of the Jews in Europe live, it said? Eastern Europe, right? But let's go just a little bit further with our kids. Where did they live in those countries? Not Germany, but in Poland and the Soviet Union and Romania and those areas, where did they live? How did they live? Okay, we've got diversity, but we want to make sure to introduce a specific word to our students. Does anyone know what that word is? The shtetl. If you said the word shtetl to your students, would they know what that is?
Who here knew what a shtetl was before he said the word shtetl? I don't love when people just said ghetto.
Okay, now I'll go ahead and tell you too. This is one of my favorite ever little quips from being a teacher. So before I taught at my current school, I taught at a tiny little, extremely rural high school. When I say rural, we had one blinking light. We're talking rural, okay? Old coal mining town. After I did a lesson on the shtetl, told my students, I said, I want you to go dig up some history and I just want you to type up Jewish population of West Blockton. And they're like, huh? I said, go do it tonight, trust me. And then all of a sudden they bust in the door and they go, one of my kids who never said a word, like never heard this child's voice for 2 months, runs in and goes, we were a shtetl in America. And I was like, lesson done. So what was the shtetl? And this is a great video you can use in your classroom.
Shtetl, town in Yiddish, is a settlement of varying, undefined size in which hundreds to thousands of Jews lived. In terms of size, it sits between a village, in which a few dozen Jewish families at most lived, and a mid-sized or regional capital city, with a larger Jewish population. These towns made up much of the Jewish landscape of Eastern Europe prior to World War II. Economically, the shtetls functioned mainly as intermediaries between the countryside and the urban centers and more distant locations. Thus, the market, which usually operated once a week, was a central economic lifeline for these towns. Business relations formed, mostly between farmers from the surrounding areas and merchants and craftsmen, most of whom were Jews. Shtetls had an organized Jewish community, mostly Yiddish-speaking, whose characteristics changed over the years, particularly after World War I. The community maintained educational, cultural, and welfare institutions, such as synagogues, Jewish schools, libraries, and community centers for youth movement and political party members. Economic and social developments in Eastern Europe brought about a decline of the shtetls, a process which intensified starting in the second half of the 19th century. The Jewish towns of Eastern Europe shared the same murderous fate as that of the rest of European Jewry during the Holocaust. The great majority of shtetl Jews were murdered. Little remained as well of the towns themselves, usually scattered ruins of synagogues or of cemeteries. In most cases, these too were destroyed and disappeared over the ensuing years. Shtetl Jewish life, in all its various facets, has been a central theme in Hebrew and in Yiddish literature, as well as in art. In some cases, the depiction was essentially nostalgic, while others took a more critical approach, focusing on its negative aspects.
So after you show that map, you can talk about the diverse communities where Jews lived in Eastern Europe and throughout Europe. Did some live in the cities? Absolutely. And then you can have a wonderful talk about assimilated versus not assimilated Jews. Do we know what the term assimilated means? Perfect. And how that would affect them moving on. But this will make wonderful connections with your students, especially if you teach. Do any of y'all teach in a smaller town type school and by chance? Okay, I'll tell you, the little town I taught in, they were very proud, and they had a Jewish community of about 150 Jewish families, people for a few decades who were the merchants coming from Birmingham and supporting the town. It literally was an American shtetl. They had a synagogue, everything. This can be wonderful for your students as they're figuring out how to learn about pre-war Jewish life. So how do you think the idea of the shtetl can fit into a unit on the Holocaust? You're helping give them that diversity, right? You're helping give them that diversity, and that's key. Now, this is where we get into the meat of Echoes and Reflections, and that is this testimony. This is in Unit 1. This is a testimony reflection sheet. It's a PDF. You can download it. You can use it anytime. Now, I know we're getting close to lunch. I know it's a little warm. We have 15 minutes, so hang with me. This is the power of Echoes and Reflections to me. Why is testimony really important in a classroom? Give me a reason. Anyone? Why would testimony be really valuable in a classroom? Oh, what? It happened to them. Perfect. Okay, why else? Oh, thank you. If I play a clip from Roman or from another survivor, and someone doesn't agree with it, your beef's with them. This is the history. These are the people saying what happened to them. Now, I'll go ahead and tell you, all of our testimony was recorded, for the most part, in the 90s. So it's a little grainy. It's a little VHS-y. But I was shocked about something. My students like that. Said it felt more real. Yeah. Said it felt more real. And here's the thing. Our clips are curated for you. And that's the difficult thing. All right? We were talking about how do we do this in a day, things like that. You want 3 minutes on Kristallnacht? We've got it for you. You want snippets of pre-war Jewish life? Guess what? We've got it for you. And you see a face. We have biographies to go with every one of them. And this immediately will help your students make connections. And that's incredibly powerful. And before I leave on Tuesday to go back to Sweet Home Alabama, I'm going to show you Eyewitness, where you can find any clip on anything you need. Now, all 4 of these clips are on our website, except this one. I stole this one. I needed a specific one. So all of these are on our website, and you can hear them. So I want you to hear a few of them so you can hear the power in these and how short they are, but how powerful they are.
We lived in the center of Berlin. My parents were upper middle class. My father was a sales representative for a large textile mill. He earned a very nice living. We had a nice apartment. The ambience was cultured. We had music. I remember my parents dressing up in evening clothes and going to the opera. We had theater, and they would take us along. We were comfortable economically, at least before the National Socialist regime took over in Germany. I'm talking about the early years that I remember, in the early 1930s, before 1933. My father, in particular, was...
Pay attention to what he says here. It's going to be incredibly important. Incredibly important.
German first and Jewish second. Now, this does not mean that he was not an observant Jew. We were what was then called observant. In this country, in the USA, this can be translated into conservative. We observed all the holidays. We went to services Friday night and Saturday morning. If my father didn't have to work, he made sure that I went and my brother went. We both, my brother and I, sang in the synagogue choir. Usually the synagogues had boys' choirs. We celebrated all the holidays. My father never worked on the holidays. We were, without keeping a kosher home, yet we observed all the traditions.
So what was that really important phrase he said? We were German first, Jewish second. Everyone who gets really deep in Holocaust education, like I guarantee you Stephen has someone, has a survivor or a story that they just really attach to for whatever reason. Mine is Marianne Blumenthal-Lozon. Anyone know her? Okay, she wrote an amazing little book called Four Perfect Pebbles. And it's Marianne is a dear friend. I need to call her. Marianne's a dear friend. She's still with us, and she is amazing. Her dad served in World War I. He was awarded medals for bravery, everything. He considered himself what? German first, Jewish second. On the night of Kristallnacht, he's arrested, goes to a camp. He respectfully goes up to the commandant or one of the officers, salutes, and attempted to ask a question and was punched. And for him, he said that was his recognition that what? I was no longer German. So you see this pre-war Jewish life for Germans was very different than our students might think. All right? And let's hear from our next one.
I had a wonderful time. I had my mother and father, and I had an older brother, about 2 years older than I. And once we got over the sibling rivalry, we got to be very good friends, my brother and I. And my parents found out pretty soon that what Margaret wanted, Margaret got. And they let me be my own, because I was not the usual child. But I had my own way of dressing. I didn't like what my mother got for me. I wouldn't wear it. And I was strong-willed. And I knew what I wanted to do very early on in life. I wanted to be a coach, physical education teacher. My parents thought I was a little freaky with all this business about sports that I was so very into. I skated, I skied, I swam, I ran, I climbed. Through my sport activities, there were more non-Jewish people involved than Jewish people. I was the only girl in my class. I was the only Jew in my class, and it never made any difference. I mean, I never felt any anti-Semitism until a certain time. I always knew I was Jewish, but our house, there was no religion practiced, really. I always say, my father said, be a decent human being, that should be your religion, and I think I have practiced that, pretty much.
By the way, you want to have a great person to connect to your students who may be tough to connect with? Margaret Lambert was an Olympic level high jumper. She was the top high jumper in Germany, expected to do well. She did not compete at the 1932 Olympics because she wasn't old enough, quite ready yet. She was highly expected to do extremely well at 1936 Olympics. Give you two guesses. Was she allowed to compete? No. So you have that student who maybe is an athlete, maybe it's a little tough to reach at times. Margaret Lambert's a great one to connect with. We'll look at one more, and then we'll talk about it so we can make sure we hit our lunch the right time.
I remembered going to my grandparents. They lived in a small town, what we used to call Stettlach. I remembered those small towns, what they looked like. And they were full of Jews. The Jews lived in the center of town. They couldn't own property. A Jew couldn't be a farmer. He wasn't allowed. They wouldn't sell him the acreage. So naturally, the farmers were the Poles, and they lived on the outskirts of town. The Jews lived in the center of town. They were the carpenters, they were the shoemakers, the watchmakers, the tailors, the tradesmen, the the iron workers. And the result was that they lived in town, and the synagogue, the shul, was also not far. The church was on one side, the synagogue was on the other.
All right, so if you use that testimony reflections sheet, and we heard from three, we didn't get to hear all four because I want to make sure we make it to lunch, but we heard from three very different survivors of the Holocaust discovering their lives prior to the war. So what did you see that were similar with these? Did you see any kind of threads throughout all three videos, all three testimonies? Their lives were normal. What else?
They all seemed happy.
They all seemed happy, right? They were very diverse and very different lives, but they all were what? Happy. And you know what my students always say when we watch these testimonies? They feel like they're talking to their who? Grandparents. Said it feels like talking to my grandma. And they connect with these, and it gives them these glimpses into what was going on there. So when you're talking about a study of the Holocaust, why is it important to take some time and get that pre-war Jewish life? Why? Yes.
Focused on the individual, and it's not just 6 million Jews that were murdered. It's Mary, it's Ivan, whoever it may be, but it focuses on the individual, which then is the human story, which then builds empathy, X, Y, and Z.
All those things, right? And we're humanizing the victims before we talk about the awful propaganda and dehumanization that we're going to talk about.
My friend who survived Auschwitz, he always said, you can't care about the death if you don't care about the life.
Love that. Love that. Absolutely love that. You can't care about the death if you don't care about the life. Yes, back there.
Children, a lot of our kids see the Holocaust survivors, old people. And the other videos you had were children. And that's why Anne Frank has such an impact, because she's a child. She's their age. And so that you see family, you see relationships, you see the individuality.
Absolutely. I love that. So we've got 5 minutes before lunch, and I'm going to give you 2 activities you can use in your classroom for pre-war Jewish life. Yes, ma'am. Please.
We're not allowed to have any land, right? So there they are in the middle of town, and they're merchants, what you mentioned, and that goes on for a long, long time. And, the money lenders, they have more money, but that was because they were not allowed to have any farmland. Yes.
Absolutely. And, a lot of times our students will say, well, Mr. Greene, I'm confused. When the Germans and the Nazis rolled in, how did they know who the Jews were? And that's where you can have a wonderful discussion about not only the collaborators, but that the system had centralized so many of them in ways like that. So 2 activities you can do in your classroom to talk about, and I hate we're not going to hear from Henry and Margaret, but we will later. So you're all getting a copy of Salvage Pages. How many of you are familiar with Salvage Pages? Oh, love it so much. I have a class set.
Hold on. There's a segue that you're all going to get a copy of the Salvage Pages if you stay and you do the things that I asked you to do. Let's clarify that. Okay. As you got one, you'll know that having 2 is actually better. So.
Are they allowed to be in the classroom before they keep getting books now? I had to ask that question.
Yeah, he said, would these be allowed in Florida? Salvage Pages.
So this Yeah. The salvage pages is everything we're giving is either for you, but the salvage pages they're just diary segments. So you wouldn't actually hand your students a copy of the salvage pages. I mean, you can if you. We have a teacher at Dr. Phillips High School, Neelam Patel, who actually has class sets and has a whole activity that she's done. For those of you who are here for her presentation, they do a thing called they do a Holocaust or genocide walk like every year at the school and has an activity. I would recommend if you're new and you have limited time to cut out segments of the diaries and use certain elements of the diaries, and it's a little easier and quicker to digest than giving them an entire book. But it is different teenage diarists throughout the 30s all the way through the end of the Holocaust.
I think that's a great question. And I'm here representing Echoes, but I'm also here as a teacher. So I'll go ahead and tell you, if you Google USHMM diaries, they have a free PDF that's like 80, 90 pages long and has a bunch of diary excerpts in it. I wish we had something like that, but we don't, but I don't want you to feel left out. So that's a great place to go. What I would love to see you guys do is, as you're using salvage pages in your classroom, and please use it, I see teachers so often just focus on the portions of diaries that talk about the ghettos and talk about the trauma and talk about the hunger and talk about the pain. And yes, we've got to talk about that. That's important though. However, some of these diarists, particularly Yitzhak Rudashevsky, Miriam Korber, some of the other ones, they have incredible entries about what their lives were like before the Nazis arrived. And they are beautiful excerpts. You can tie those in, and before you have your students do a diary analysis and talk about the ghettos and the pain and the suffering, you can instead say, hey, let's spend the first day talking about what were their lives like before. Again, you're humanizing before the dehumanization. Now, the last one I'll do is this. Does anyone know what the Valley of the Communities is in Yad Vashem? Okay, we've only got one person who knows. So the Valley of the Communities is when you go to Yad Vashem, you can walk through, and it is a beautiful stone pathway, and it has the names of the communities that were lost, the shtetls and the Jewish communities that were lost during the Holocaust. Now, I would show this video, but we don't have time. So I'm just going to instead explain this really neat activity you can do with this. So you can do this. This is what it looks like. Now, thanks to some intrepid person, they have Google mapped the entire Valley of the Communities. So you can do what's called an eye walk. Does anyone know what an eye walk is? Okay, eye walks are cool. I'm going to try and get this one added. We have a whole eyewitness section of eye walks, and I'm going to try and do everything to get this one added. So what you can do is this. You can have your students go on an eye walk. And if you're not familiar with an eye walk, if you're one-to-one or you have access to Chromebooks or an iPad, put them on Google Maps, have them drop the little yellow guy. I call him Frank. Whatever you want to call him is up to you. You drop Frank, have them walk through the Valley of the Communities. There's nothing there traumatic as far as images or anything like that. Have them pick a random community and have them do a little research and see what was that community's population before the war? What was that community's population after the war? And as they walk through and they see all these communities, it helps them contextualize and come to terms with the gravity of the numbers. But also, I've had students come back after doing this and being, wow, that was a really neat town. It really brings that human side to them, but then you're also then tying it on to the devastation and what we lost. It's a great way to kind of get that going as a startup. So, as we return to the principles, I'll just ask, and this is for anyone online too, all our Zoom people. All right. Hopefully, through my talk this morning and your talk, which you guys were wonderful, by the way, do you feel like you've improved a pedagogical principle? All right. Would anyone like to share? Which one do you feel better about now? Anyone want to share? Which one do you feel better about? Yes, thank you.
Teaching the human story.
Teaching the human story. All right, great. All right. Is there another one someone feels better about? I saw a finger go out there. Primary source material. Absolutely. And I believe at the tail end of today, I'm going to have a little bit of time and I'm going to give you guys a walkthrough of some Echoes resources. If not, I'll do that tomorrow as well. Anyone else? One more. What's one more? Someone feels really good about now, feels better about. Contextualizing the history and
humanizes it and they're able to relate to it and relate it to what they do today to what the kids do.
love that.
Reiterate that.
Love that. Absolutely love that. Kayla, anything on the Zoom people are feeling
Specifically related to the
Yes.
question.
Yes. Cindy says she feels like she can make the Holocaust more relevant. Elizabeth S. says she feels better about the human story, resources, and fostering empathy. And Colby says he also feels better about making the Holocaust relevant.
Thank you all so much. And I promise I'm going to go over different ones. As you're eating lunch, if you could please do me a small favor. Again, I get in trouble if I don't do this. If you all could please do an evaluation. And if you liked me, please say that. If you didn't like me, please feel free to say that. I hear it enough from my wife. So if you did not, I understand. But please do a program evaluation. I hope you enjoyed it and I hope you got something out of it. So thank you. And I know it's lunchtime, so I'll hand it over to Stephen. Oh, yes, sir. Okay. Great question. Echoes does not, and I really want us to put one up, but you can find them fairly easily. And I can probably curate one for you. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Solid pages. The editor is Alexander Zapruder. Thank you. The editor is Alexander Zapruder. The name may sound familiar to you. Her grandfather was the guy who did the famous Zapruder film of the assassination of John F. Kennedy. And she also wrote an incredibly moving and powerful book about her family's experiences with the sort of legacy of that film. Just kind of an interesting fact there. Thank you.
Yes, and if you ever have the chance to do PD with Alexandra, she is phenomenal. I mean, she's absolutely phenomenal.
We've had her here twice, or we've had her speak here two times. Who was here for? We did Defiant Requiem, and also the Salvage Pages. So if you remember Defiant Requiems, Alex was on that as well as. And that was the first year. We gave out Salvage Pages a couple of years ago. I try to give it out every couple of years. But so by the way, so you're gonna see Logan all day tomorrow. So he's not leaving. You get him a whole other day, but if you give him one more round of applause. It was a great way to start off the day. Kayla, go ahead, and we're gonna stop the recording. Everyone online, we're gonna take a break, and you'll come back into the session by clicking on the live session for the afternoon.